Thank you all for being here tonight. This is not my usual scholarly work. I think of it as an act of love, which is kind of a strange thing to say, but there you have it. Of course, there'll be some quotes, because that's who I am, and I like to quote poets especially. I do find some comfort in aligning myself with a long tradition of personal essays that began with Montaigne, Michel de Montaigne, in the Renaissance. And he was the first to write these philosophical, personal, and very subjective reflections on topics that included religion, education, friendship, love, and freedom. Montaigne called his original work essai, which means, in French, it means an attempt. So tonight I am attempting such a personal and subjective piece of writing with this essay on love and my experience with plant medicine. I knew that my heart was broken. I believed it. I knew somewhat dimly that it had to do with more than my last relationship. I didn't know what or why. I did want to heal, but I didn't know how. I wouldn't know what any of it meant, actually, until I landed in Guatemala in 2014, in November. It's taken me this long to put words to this. So it's taken me this long to be able to put words to this, words about love. So many have been written and sung. How does one understand, let alone express, the unfathomable? Or as the poet Rilke would declare in his 9th Duino elegy, the unsayable. At the end of the year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Valentine's Day, most people seem to turn their attention more prominently toward love and its many expressions, including gratitude, care, togetherness. The Norwegian writer Arne Garborg says, to love someone is to learn the song of their heart and sing it to them when they have forgotten. His definition points to something about the nature of love. It means we are able to see another in their authentic power, which is to say, their presence, and meet it with our own. It means unmasking what steals our own heart from us. Our carefully constructed persona, our intellectual defenses, our family history, our society, and all the projections they engender. It's very difficult to do. Rilke thought so. He said that love is the work for which all other work is but a preparation. That learning to love actually requires solitude and time. I thought I knew what love is. But to think about something or have an opinion about it, and to have deeply heartfelt experience and understanding of it are two different things. And as the wonderful poet E. Cummings once said, whenever you think, or you believe, or you know You are a lot of other people. But the moment you feel, you're nobody but yourself. And I think that can be very scary, actually. Many of us, unfortunately and often unconsciously, push love away as a result of personal difficulties or trauma. We don't even realize we're doing that. And if we do realize it, we convince ourselves that it's for very logical and sane reasons, when in truth we're afraid of our own heart, of loving, of being loved, of feeling, of hurting, being abandoned or rejected in our core. And sadly, I think it's very common and accounts for many divorces and failed relationships. As a child, I saw my mother and stepfather's relationship dissolve over 7 agonizing years after the death of their child, my half-sister. Her birth had been prayed for and longed for, by me included. My mother told me to pray for her, pray to the moon, and I did. Pray for a miracle. My sister was indeed seen as a miracle, or at least an unlikely outcome from the doctor's perspective, because of my stepfather's lack of good swimmers. So when my sister died at birth, through an unfortunate and ill-fated sequence of events, taking with her any chance of my mother having a child ever again, each one reacted in their own way. I was the witness and often the recipient of their ongoing agony, which turned to helpless rage, anger, bitterness, resentment, and silent scorn over time. They became worse than strangers to each other. The distance turned into a gap so vast and so cold, their hearts so closed down, that no one, let alone the child I was, could have ever formed a bridge over the abyss. I did try, as children do, seeing their parents so angry and sad. Neither one of them learned how to stop pushing love away. Perhaps my sister's death was really the catalyst of much deeper personal difficulties that got crystallized with her passing. I do not know for sure, but I know this. Without inner work and self-examination, they could not heal, and their hearts became close to each other, and eventually they divorced. Though they both went on to other relationships, their hearts could not love freely. I drank from that bitter brew at a tender age and for far too long. Add to this a nasty custody battle when I was 7 years old between my father and my mother over who would raise me into adulthood, and you have not a pretty picture. I experienced my mother's rage against my father and my stepfather on my body, in my mind, and in my heart. My own relationships seemed fated as much as failed. I was either trying to rescue and heal someone or being rescued by someone. My ideal traits for a man, and this is very embarrassing, seemed to combine handsome, creative, emotionally stunted, unpredictable, dangerous, borderline sociopath or psychotic, and add a sprinkle of drug or alcohol addiction for the perfect recipe. Not the picture of psychological health, mine or theirs, by any means. It took me a long time and a lot of help to learn to make better choices, including in my friendships. When my father, my Irish love, and my beloved feline companion of 20 years all died within weeks of each other in 2009, I thought the ground had fallen out from under me. I thought, what is the point of living if everyone you love is dead? I thought about that dilemma a lot. I tried to find meaning, and I did have meaning in my life. I had been intent on living a soul-directed life, which had taken me from the world of myth and dreams to the collective unconscious, and I never completely left the world of cinema behind. But I still believed that my next relationship would fix everything. It was meant to save me from myself and my grief. It was the answer to all my problems, except it wasn't. The man was only a human being with his own problems, losing a lucrative job soon after we met, fearful of the word commitment. I think he thought it was a 4-letter word. Dealing with what he perceived to be his ex-wife's betrayal. We tried to love each other, but we both had agendas and they did not match. I wanted him to make up for all the losses in my life, and he wanted freedom most of all. The bright flame of our love vanished as quickly as it arrived, despite my attempts at keeping it, which only seemed to make matters worse. I became an unflattering version of myself. Passive-aggressive, jealous, unkind. I convinced myself he had broken my heart. When I finally touched the grief I had managed and controlled until that moment, I found the person I loved least of all was myself. How could that be? I knew I must answer that question and rediscover my way home into my own heart, no matter how beleaguered, if I meant to find a reason to continue living. I believed love must be the guiding principle of a life well lived. That is to say, a life with meaning and with mystery. Mystery is at the core of life. And each one of us wrestles with that archetypal principle in our own way. At the same time, I realized I knew little of love, what it really was, what it meant, what it could do to really transform us. Here's a quote. Eric Fromm says that understanding and loving are inseparable. If they're separate, it is a cerebral process, and the door to essential understanding remains closed. I needed to learn to understand, which is to say, to listen in a different way, without agenda, with an open heart, in order to love. But how? How did I open my heart when I believed it was broken? I needed to become related to the mystery of love in a completely new way. I needed a death and rebirth experience, which is not easy for someone like me, determined to stay in control, for which I had gone to extreme lengths earlier in my life. And perhaps that was part of the problem. Love is not something to be controlled. The ancient Greeks knew this, and the troubadours knew this. For them, love is a god or God. The unloved places in myself, calcified by the complexities of trauma, formed a barrier to love. This barrier said, "Do not look here on pain of death. You are unlovable, unworthy, ugly," and many other terrible and far too common dark things. My search took me to many places, from deep in my own unconscious, examining the wisdom of dreams, to sacred places from Bali to South America, the ancient wisdom of plant medicine and the shamans who wield its extraordinary power. When something is meant to happen in your life, synchronicities conspire to make it so. Things fall into place in a very particular way. Even if one never considered doing such a thing until that moment. I never thought I would be someone to seek out the wisdom of plant medicine in such a remote place. I don't drink, I don't smoke, or do anything that can make me feel out of control in any way. The motivation is bad things will happen if I don't stay in control, especially because everyone else around me seems so out of control. This was particularly true for me in my childhood, as my mother was completely unpredictable and so often out of control with her rage. When it takes a plane, a bus, and a boat to get somewhere, you know you're not only on a journey, but on an adventure. I truly had no idea what was in store. All I knew was that I was going into the Guatemalan jungle and I would spend 2 weeks by a lake sacred to the local people, Lake Atitlan. It was November 2nd, 2014 when I arrived, finally. It took a couple of days to get there. This is a sacred time for many people all over the world. It is a time when the dead are closer to the living and the living to the dead. The veil is thinner. It seemed appropriate for stepping into the unknown. I was not alone taking this trip. There were strangers who would all become intimate friends during this initiation into the depth. Soon after we arrived, I was struck by the terrible beauty of the place. The lake itself, swollen with the winter rains, rose above homes and treetops planted too close to the shore. Nature seemed at its most extreme, spiders as big as my fist. On the other hand, the deadliest scorpions were the smallest ones, and they could hide under your pillow, and did. Butterflies and dragonflies flew all around and into our faces with abundant and enormous wings like birds. And there were leaves as big as parasols, all of it so beautiful and overwhelming in its grandeur. First came the fire ceremony and the calling of the Nahuales, our spirit guides. It turns out my Nahual is Khan, the serpent, symbol of justice, wisdom, and truth, the flute of life. But I must be empty to let the wisdom of life blossom and sing through me. Ah, there is the rub. I thought to myself, I suppose the great ayahuasca grandmother will take care of all that emptying, won't she? Not too much emptying, I hope. And yet, this was why I was here. This emptying of all the beliefs and ideas that filled me with thoughts that really did not work for me anymore, and that I couldn't shake off no matter how hard I tried, because they were stuck to me with the super glue of family history and ancestry, and most of all, mother rage. The ceremony was to last all night. I didn't know that. What about sleep? I fretted about everything. Who to sit next to, what to wear, what spot to choose in the temple, Should I tell the shaman I have allergies? That tobacco smoke and incense make me cough? All these questions were quite simply the fear of the unknown, the fear of loss of control. I talked to the plant in my mind, asking her to be gentle with me. How foolish that was. Grandmother ayahuasca, the vine of the dead, is not gentle. Oops, went too fast. There she is. I wrote my name on the lake so she would remember me. I was afraid I would die. I knew when she got hold of me, she would not let me go until she was done. I was afraid my body would not be strong enough. I was afraid I would lose my mind. That was the worst one. We were all explained what to expect by the shaman and how to ask for help if we needed it. I knew I probably wouldn't. There is that part of me that wants to be heroic, courageous, stronger than I think I am. And then it was evening, the first night. We had all prepared as best we could. And somewhere inside, I knew that nothing at all could prepare me for what was about to occur. Not even the best recommended dieta, with no salt, no wheat, no citrus, no sugar, no spices, no dairy, no beef, no alcohol or other drugs of any kind. The anorexic in me loved the strict nature of the dieta. I know it was meant to make it easier for the body or for the plant, but it made me feel more spiritual, more powerful, again, more in control. The shaman called forward each one of us in turn with a quiet gesture. When my turn came, I walked slowly in the shadows as the moon began to rise, guided toward the candlelight and the stick of sage still burning from the cleansing of the drum. His apprentice, a woman, next to him, also preparing and helping him pour the dark medicine brew. Shamans can be either male or female. The spirit world does not discriminate. I knelt in front of the shaman, shaking slightly. He poured the liquid into a small cup and offered it to me. I took it from him and brought it to my lips. I hesitated for a moment, knowing it was far too late to stop. I drank from this bitter, earthy, liquid mud, humbly bowed in thanks and walked back to my little improvised bed next to the altar. These were the last steps I would be capable of taking for the rest of the night. This first ceremony began with me trying to sit cross-legged in meditation, like the young man with missing fingers next to me. But that didn't last very long. As grandmother Yage worked herself into my blood, pure terror rose in my mind. My bones dissolved. I felt like some primitive animal, a snake, writhing in pain or being liberated. I didn't know which, I didn't care. It didn't occur to me at that moment that my nahual is serpent. I was fighting Aya, trying to stay in control, but she was much stronger. So much stronger. My mind tried to hold on. I think I'm dying. This is insane. Why did I ever think I could do this? I'll never survive. Where did my bones go? All of the holding on, the grasping, all the control was dissolving, and that was terrifying. Then the songs began, and with them came the purging. From the depth of my soul, it came up. I thought I was vomiting snakes. I remember hearing the ethnobotanist Mark Plotkin talk about his terrible experience vomiting scorpions. I suppose it's all relative. I was vaguely aware of the young man with the missing fingers sitting next to me, how still and quiet he remained. I knew this was not his first time, but still, it seemed to me like some form of insane mastery beyond the realm of my comprehension. The songs, the Icaros, were calling out to Aya, and Aya answered their call. It was a dance, the dance of life and death, these forever partners, these twin born of some unnameable power. And I was being danced. I was their puppet. Then, when I thought I could not bear one more moment, when I felt utterly spent, the shaman came to me and blew his tobacco smoke on and around my head and my face. And it was a prayer so powerful. I felt calmer, better, quieter, almost instantly. It was a moment of pure bliss. I inhaled the tobacco like it was salvation, and I guess it was a moment of remission. I never thought tobacco could have that power, that effect. But it did in that moment, in that context, wielded by the shaman. It was a pure, loving spirit. And I understood why it was so sacred to the First Nation people. Then I began to sing softly from somewhere inside myself. I couldn't help it. The Icaros sung by the shaman were my songs too. Part of me knew them somehow. Some of the songs were in Spanish, my mother tongue. Some in other dialects, Quechua, Lamista, or Shipibo, or even Lakota. Regardless, these songs were a power that did something, words and music, sometimes a grinding or a whistling, like sharp to the ear, but beautiful to the soul. Vuela, vuela, paloma. Then the voice came to me, tranquilita, mi chiquita, like a grandmother. My mouth smiled in my face and I touched it with my fingers. Yeah, I was smiling incongruously. I briefly opened my eyes. It took enormous strength. The nature around the temple was white, silver, shiny with moonlight. Spirit animals and friends from the other side came. Then a vision of the cosmos and millions of stars and shooting stars, a grandiose darkness full of light. When a small or negative thought came into my head, the voice would say, "This is an insane thought. Look at that." Toward the end of the night, around 4 a.m., when all had gone already, including the shaman, I finally found the strength to get up and walk outside. Wobbly. And I saw the generosity of this world all around. One of the initiates was waiting. He helped me walk down the stone stairs. He seemed like an Indian prince to me at that moment, with long curly hair shiny in the moonlight. I was still getting my earth legs back. Then he offered me a pear. And I took a bite. And it was the most amazing, delicious piece of fruit I had ever tasted. I was tasting for the first time like a child. It was wondrous. I was for the first time fully in my body able to taste the food I was eating. And my taste buds told me it was juicy and rich with perfume and delicious. And I could only take 1 or 2 bites, and then I gave it back to him, and so we shared it. We were given 1 day to recuperate. And that was followed by a second fire ceremony. My godson, Max, my angel, got a special blessing. I had brought a picture of him with me and a couple of other talismans, 2 rings, one belonging to a close friend who was on a similar path, and the other was mine, legacy from my grandmother, my father's mother, whose whole family had died in the concentration camps. I walked around the lake. I took a swim. I watched the taxi boats. They're the main mode of transportation here to go from one village to another. Whether you're a young girl going to Panajachel International School, or someone coming back from the mercado with a basket full of groceries on your head and a cell phone on your ear. One has to flag the taxi. There's no regular stops. You just flag the taxi, which in general is done with an article of clothing, a scarf, or a cardigan. Such a strange and beautiful life. Honestly, I did not think I could go through another night like that first one. I was quite determined to talk myself out of it. And yet, when the evening came, after a day of rest, there I was, taking my place with the others in the temple above the lake. After that first night, I could not imagine getting through the same ordeal a second time. I had the tiny hope that maybe it might be a little bit easier. Well, I was wrong. I thought this time I completely lost my sanity, what was left of it. How could I be so stupid? What was I thinking? Didn't I learn my lesson the first time? All the voices of fear were clamoring together again. I thought my intention was to accept more love in my life. I did not know what I was asking for. I did not know I would have to go through an ordeal. Grandmother showed me I had to accept every pettiness, every thoughtless action, every character defect about myself, and still believe I was a good human being. I had to accept my mother and her inability to respond to my call for love, and the desperation and the feeling of abandonment that came with it, and still believe I was a good human being, meaning worthy of being loved. With each acceptance came rivers of tears that lasted all night long. I had to accept all of it before I could accept love in my heart, or rather, before there was room to let love in. I finally thought I was done. But then I was told I needed to accept death and the infinity of it all. And with each acceptance came a surrender, and with each surrender, tears flowed. I thought if I kept crying, I would have enough tears for the whole planet. It reminded me of the fairy tale of the handless maiden. whose tears washed her clean, so the devil could not get her after all. Then I asked, "What now? Are we done yet?" That is when I was asked to accept life, which seemed the hardest of all somehow, and more tears came. Then I asked, "Who are you speaking to me in my mind? What do you want from me?" She answered, "I want nothing from you. I want you." That confused me. So she said, "Just be, like the rocks and the giant leaves you admire so, like the mountain and the lake." She said she was myself, my wisdom, that we had created each other, which of course I did not understand. She said she was grandmother. I saw two great eyes in the darkness, and they frightened me so deeply, I thought I would faint. So the two became a single eye, which made it somehow more tolerable. And then suddenly, showers of light, the purest love poured toward me and into my heart. And I had to accept that, perhaps the most unbearable of all. The arrows of Eros came to mind with their power to bring a god to his knees. And then she said, I had never been alone, for she was with me every step, forever, always. And I had to accept that. And more tears, rivers of tears, poured from my eyes. And in an instant, the other side of the coin, the laughter, was present too. I experienced relatedness that night, which is to say the real feminine principle, true kinship or affiliation with life, in a way I'd never had, as if I had become the daughter of love and wisdom, Eros and Sophia. The next night, the shaman anointed me with grandmother ayahuasca, and in the moment she touched my forehead, I started to tremble and cry. It was perhaps like being touched by lightning. So he shook his head a little and poured some of the liquid back into the bottle. There was humor in that gesture, I thought. It struck me as funny in any case, and as if he was saying, oh, better not overdo it with her. Over the course of the time in the temple, I was a witness to the shaman's work. How difficult and profound it must be, as he too was filled with the power of ayahuasca while he worked and healed each one of us. This shaman was also a great singer and drummer. The Icaros sang through him, and he was one with them. He was the song singing. His eyes were hard to look into, and yet they drew you in. They were so big and fathomless. His children, 3-year-old daughter and a newborn son, had his eyes. His wife and children joined us during mealtime outside the temple, during the day. During the ceremony, I saw the shaman transform into an old Indian man, and then as he walked, I saw him become a bear. He was himself and not himself. Actually, I think someone told me later that one of his names is related to bear, but I didn't know that then. He was in communion with the other world. It was obvious. He was in complete surrender and partnership with the spirits. It was awe-inspiring and humbling to witness. That night, I no longer needed to purge with the Icaros. There was no more need for pain in order to learn the truth of my being. It was the greatest gift of Aya, that I could choose to learn without pain, and the hardest one to hold on to. Being remade whole through the one true song of the world into my first self was meant to be an experience of joy. A part of me was dumbfounded by that realization. It was completely foreign to my identification with struggle and suffering, and probably of all spiritual ideas, the most unlike my Judeo-Christian background. I've had spiritual experiences before, meaning an undeniable experience of clarity and connection to the eternal. That's my definition, at least. Mind you, there is a difference between spiritual awakening and a spiritual experience. Spiritual awakening is a continuous trajectory toward oneness with life, whereas a spiritual experience tends to be a momentary connection, which therefore can be lost. Of all my spiritual experiences, most of them came in moments of tremendous suffering, or loss, or grief. One of my greatest experiences was at my father's funeral, and it lasted 3 days. It was perhaps, well, I was perhaps open to this, but I don't even recall asking for supernatural help exactly. Though help came perhaps because in moments of great suffering, the heart can break open. The walls that hold us safely prisoner of our own minds and hearts dissolve. I suppose Aya was trying to teach me that those experiences can come through joy as well. But the via negativa, the apophatic Christian mysticism, seems to be the way for most humans. I did have one experience as a child, which was utter joy and freedom. But I didn't know what it was or to give it a name at the time. I remember pure feelings only. And then I remember my mother angry with me for forgetting time and forgetting her for a few hours, and my defiant heart closing down on itself with guilt and shame and forgetting the extraordinary sensation of vastness and wholeness I had experienced in one blissful moment in the wheat fields. I heard the wind laugh. I danced with the long stalks ready for harvest. I shouted with the glistening stream of freezing mountain water, a crown of leaves on my head. I felt as big as the mountain and as fearsome. I was 8 years old. On the last night of ceremony, the shaman worked on me. That means he sang over me. He sang the Icaros over my body, over me, for a long time, as I knelt in front of him. And of course, more tears came. But the tears of sadness and the tears of joy come from the same place. And I experienced both. Aya told me to listen to the songs with a pure heart, my true spirit, which is childlike joy. I suspect it is the authentic nature of soul for most, if not all, human beings. And I did as she asked because now I could. And the songs were pure joy and tenderness, love, power, beauty, and truth of a level that cannot be described in human words. Where before I thought they were the bringers of my agony, now I knew the songs were the greatest healers. They reminded me of the legend of Minnehaha, of the Blackfoot tribe, who sang her father back to life after he had been trampled to death by the buffalo, and thus helped bring the buffalo dance to her tribe. On our last day, before one last sleepless night, and our 3 a.m. departure to take the plane, the bus, and the boat in reverse, we went up the mountain where the villagers live. I could barely breathe. My heart was beating so fast. I had forgotten how high up we were, and my body was not used to the altitude of the highlands that surround this massive volcanic crater of Lake Atitlan. I had much to learn from this mountain, from the lake, and the virgin forest still. I hoped I would keep all of this beautiful interpretation of life clear and present in my heart. I hoped to never forget it. Love, the untarnished glory of true being, is almost unbearable to my human limited self. Milan Kundera, the Czech-born writer, named it the unbearable lightness of being. It is the song of the universe, the gift of the shaman's song. The songs are real. They are a portal to wholeness. Their power is real when the heart is open and receptive to it. But to let it in is almost too much. And we cannot even recognize it, let alone receive it, if we are filled with our own stories and beliefs, if we are too full of ourselves. There's no room for love to enter. And it is difficult for some of us, severed as we often are from our own instincts. How do I enter the forest or recognize the mimosa tree in my backyard? How can I comprehend the visitations of heron or owl, or the importance of the simple milkweed? How can I interpret the words of the wind, the call of the rain? Our society creates so much garbage. It makes us sick. This is why the healing the shamans provide with their plant medicine and medicinal songs is often temporary for Western people seeking wholeness. We return home to our garbage-filled lives, and we fill ourselves up with the same images, stories, beliefs that are reinforced by our milieu. We're steeped in it. So what can we do to clean it out, to stay attuned to the music of the heart? It's not easy. Coming back to the world after such an initiation was really difficult for me. Another kind of ordeal. The agony that everyone seemed to be in was almost intolerable. While I was still fresh, reborn from the sacred lake of Atitlan, my eyes could still see and my heart could still listen. And it seemed to me that everyone was in pain and trying to get rid of it in one way or another, throwing it at any willing passenger of this crazy world. The heart crying out unheard while we all go on with our daily bread and a little medicine on the side, going back to whatever coping mechanism we have put in place to begin with, the same one we sought healing from, until the next crisis, the next moment of truth generously provided by life, the loss of the job, the death of a loved one, the illness, the accident, the discovery of an awful betrayal. These events that stop us in our tracks, that make us question ourselves and our motives, that make us look at the old wounds that were covered over but not healed, the portals to stillness and to listening. Listening becomes the way back through the darkness toward a more encompassing and empathic life, toward love. It has taken me a long while to comprehend what happened, to be able to recover it in a way that was tangible and livable for me. And I lost my way again many times, as humans tend to do unless they have achieved enlightenment. I knew in my bones that I needed something to ground me in a truth stronger than my monkey mind, as the Buddhists call it, more beautiful and powerful than my fears and worries, something more sensitive and more real than anything in our fabricated world, more like the heart of my heart, a natural, instinctual mirror of the self. And I did find it again. That deep connection to the world and myself. I found it again when I found the horse, or it found me. There's no time to get lost in the labyrinth of old mind when you're facing a 1,200-pound animal. I was confronting what still needed to be redeemed in an immediate way, chasing old foggy beliefs out of my mind with the bright sky of a horse's quivering breath or whinny of recognition. It was meditation in the body, in connection with another being, a priceless gift. It was love, freedom, joy, like that of the child in the wheat fields. The horse was my mediator between two worlds, the world of spirit and the world of things. Known by many names, from the winged Pegasus to Bucephalus tamed by Alexander the Great, from Kantaka, the Buddha's horse, to Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged steed who could travel to hell and back. Very useful. Shunkawakan, the holy dog of the Lakota, the horse, brought me back to myself. Only the horse could help me remember the wisdom of the plant in my body and the beauty of the songs in my heart. A mythical being of sensual awareness, demanding and offering courage and presence. Horses are like dreams that you can touch. What else is there to remind you of what is essential and beautiful? What brings you back from the abyss of your own mind? What dream reconnects you to your natural self? How do you remember to listen to the wisdom of your heart? How do you remember love? Or as the Buddhists say, how do you remember your original face before you were born? And now I have to quote Dante Alighieri. I can't complete this without him. The infinite goodness has such wide arms that it takes whatever turns to it. So I want to end this, if you'd like, with a short Icaro, which is a call to open the heart. It's not meant to be particularly pretty, which is a good thing, because I've been hardly able to talk or sing in the last couple of weeks. But I wanted to share it with you if you'd like. Does that sound good to end with that? Okay. Ábrete corazón, ábrete sentimiento, ábrete entendimiento, deja al lado la razón y deja brillar al sol, escondido en tu interior. Ábrete memoria antigua, escondida en la tierra, en las plantas, bajo el agua, bajo el fuego. Ábrete corazón, ábrete sentimiento, ábrete entendimiento, deja al lado la razón y deja brillar al sol, escondido en tu interior. Es tiempo ya, ya es ahora, ábrete corazón y recuerda como el espíritu cura, como el amor sana, como el árbol florece, la vida perdura. Que para llegar a Dios hay que aprender a ser humano. Ábrete corazón, ábrete sentimiento, ábrete entendimiento, deja al lado la razón y deja brillar al sol, escondido en tu interior. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from anyone? Yes?
I don't have a question for you, Raïna, but I can't believe you were apologizing for your voice and then out came Mytho.
Well, that was a miracle because I've been coughing a lot the last 2 weeks. That was spirit. Thank you. I actually made some copies of the song if you want the words. Yes. If you'd like the words. Yeah. Any, yes?
Do you have it recorded? Was it an Arcanas from, is it a personal creation or?
No, this is not mine. It's a traditional song that I shared with you.
From what? From the Arcanas?
Mm-hmm. Yes. By the way, this is my godson sitting next to this person there. My little angel, Max, he's right there. Yes.
Thank you so much. I was so inspired and totally tuned into your talk. Something really powerful that I took away, you said, I can choose to learn without pain. Can you just speak about that a little bit?
Well, that was the final gift I got from grandmother, was this idea that, you know, it's the two sides of the same coin. You know, I had a lot of grief from going way back and maybe, who knows, previous lifetimes. And yet, it's the same channel. When you clear it up, this incredible joy is right there. It's the same passageway, you know? So any moment, it's like we can be in a place of despair or sadness or anger or any of those feelings. But it's the same channel where love and joy and gratitude and all those other feelings are right there too. Right? But we have this such habitual, you know, paths in our minds that are used to going there, those places, you know, they kind of drag us there. So that's why it's so helpful to have something that can bring you back to center. You know, that's why people meditate. That's some people dance, and so a lot of people do yoga or, you know, whatever. Because those things are there, they're tools that help us remember to center, so you can connect to that funnel through which all those, you know, it's like that big passageway through which all feelings go, you know, back and forth. Yeah. Yes.
Have you read Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind?
No, I haven't.
I don't know if you know who he is. He's primarily known as a food writer, but then he wrote this book about, basically it's the tradition of ingesting psychedelics or altered consciousness types of substances. One of the stories he told was very similar to what you're talking about when you had an idea come in and you could identify it.
Yeah, I had a very strong, wise voice telling me, this is an insane thought, don't stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It really actually, he's very supportive of the idea of using shaman and people like that to help them through it.
Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned synchronicities guiding you towards your journey.
Absolutely.
First, I'd love to hear anything I can say about that notion of synchronicity, but my question is, how do you distill what is the correct way to read a synchronicity? Because our mind can probably play tricks. You should do this, and that's not a healthy thing.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't think it's something that comes like effortlessly or easily, but there is a depth to synchronicity, you know, that you can start feeling that correspondence between your inner sense of self and the outer world. There's like this incredible thing that starts happening. And also, usually there is more than one. You'll get, like, if something is really meant to happen, you'll get like one thing and then another, you know, because some of us, like, you know, I can be like, I need like big neon lights, you know what I mean, to tell me like, you're supposed to do this. Because this was so far out of my comfort zone, you know? And yet, you know, I had been seeking to live a soul-directed life from when I was a little kid, you know? So I think there is this, the knowing comes to you because it becomes really obvious. And because it's usually not one thing, it's more than one. You know? And if it's meant to happen, it comes looking for you. It comes to get you. You know?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
On the topic of synchronicity, I feel like I have to share this, that I've done many ayahuasca ceremonies, and I have one coming up next week. And I didn't know that this talk was about plant medicine or about ayahuasca.
Oh.
And so during your story, I found myself sitting here like, wait a minute. How did I get into this seat in front of you?
Interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean, your story was so powerful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good journey. Mm-hmm. Any other question? Yes?
And
Hi. She was one of my students in a workshop I taught here, the Cradle and The Crown. Yeah.
I was thinking about, you were talking, I think I'm thinking it's right. You're talking about the same path. It's feelings.
Yes.
Feel.
Yeah, feeling. You know, it goes back to that quote by E. Cummings I mentioned towards the beginning, you know? When you think or you know or you believe, you're a lot of other people. But the moment you feel, you're nobody but yourself. Right? There's no hiding, there's no cheating that can happen with a feeling.
And it's not good, bad, or indifferent.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Greg.
I just want to thank you. This is a great Valentine's Day gift.
Thank you. Yeah.
I admire your courage.
Thank
sharing
you.
This. I admire your scholarship about it at the same time. It's incredibly rare to hear this, and I just appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate you too. And I did say at the beginning it was an act of love for me, instead of bringing maybe another conversation to that word. Yeah. Yes, Alex.
Do you think ayahuasca should or is becoming mainstream? Does it need to be, is it being introduced?
I don't think it could ever be really mainstream, but I think more people are drawn to it.
Is there any sense or is there any path to bring it to society?
This is very difficult for me to answer and talk about, because it is such a sacred thing. You know, it's like what was done to yoga in this country. I mean, you know, it's like, oh.
What was done to any religion that was true in the beginning?
It's, you know, it's a very difficult. I think each person is called, you know. It certainly is not for everybody, for sure.
Tap water, just have
He's a joker. He's lots of trickster energy, Alex. It's a death, right? Ayahuasca is a death
So is alcohol.
and a rebirth. It's not the same. It's it is, you know, it takes you to a place where you really have to face your shadow, to speak in Jungian terms. And you don't know what it is. Even if you think you know what your shadow is, you don't, right? Because it's your blind spot. Ayahuasca takes you there, which is why it's so terrifying, right? It reduces you to, you know, the cocoon state. And it's so difficult for Western people because of what we have become, because the way our society is made, because we're so, you know, filled with fabrication, you know. But life is miraculously generous and will provide you with things to break those things down, like I talked about. All those things that we're afraid of, we don't want to happen in our lives, the being laid off, the loss of the job, the loss of the death of a loved one, all those things. Those are the things, the exact things that life provides for you in order for you to return home to your own heart. Right? To let go of all the stuff you think life is about. Those are the gifts that life provides. It's built in. So, and I don't think anyone lives without those experiences. You can't go through life without, you can try, but I don't think you can. So, we resist those gifts, we are afraid of them, but they're there to break open our hearts, to help us return to love. Yes?
One overarching conclusion to your story that I find so beautiful is I heard describe the place where, for instance, Freud and Jung agree, which is that shortly put, succinctly put, the objective of psychological life is to recapture what was lost in childhood without being infantile. And I think
Yeah.
Freud fits that perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm not sure it's true, but it seems to fit.
Well, you have to come to this place of, I think Picasso talked about it. It took him a lifetime to learn how to paint like a child again. Right? And I think there is that childlike, I'm not saying childish, but childlike affiliation to life that is very, very pure.
That's what affiliation means, making yourself a child of.
Yes, I did use that word, didn't I? And that's what we yearn for. That's what we always looking toward. That attunement to the heart of life, which is joy, and abundance and generosity. Just look at a field of flowers. I have one tiny little tree in a pot on my balcony, and it's like I can feed the whole building, right? When my lemons are in bloom, my tree is got all these lemons. Well, I have two, but I can feed a whole building with just one little tree on my balcony. That's generosity. That's life. It's not stingy or petty, for sure. It's love. Yes?
Would you say we wake up our child again?
I'm sorry?
We wake up our child. Is that kind of what's happening? Our child is there. But,
I think we wake up to the purity of our own heart, which has been covered over by, everything that happens, over a lifetime. I think that's what we do. We just wake up to the purity of our own heart. That's why I said at one point that, that I suspect that is the true nature of all human beings. It is. I think. Something to think about. Anyone else? Yes.
You've talked a lot about sort of the walls people put up around themselves that prevents love from coming in, and your experience broke the walls down. There seems to be an equal opposite where people, say, have holes in their bucket, so they can't retain that. Do you have any insight on that from your experience or experiences?
Holes in the bucket. That's a good metaphor. Well, the work that I've tried to develop to, help other people with this process really holds like two aspects that are equally important. One is that reconnection with that, childlike joy. And I think every single child has had at least one experience, right? Because that's what we are born with. So there is this, it's part of us. We just need to reconnect with it. So a lot of the work that I try to do is to help people reconnect with that. But then on the other part, on the other end of it, also reconnect with the adult in a different way, like without all these other false beliefs and thoughts. And it's kind of a whole process. But to come to this place of the inner wisdom that we also have, which is that sense of inner authority. So you're holding two things. You're holding, it's like you have, and you can lose it. I mean, I was just, just earlier tonight, I feel like I was in with Greg in his office. That's like the confessional or something. But anyway, and I was trying to get back to center because I had lost my center because of something that happened. So it takes work and diligent work. But if you practice this connection to your that sense of inner authority as the adult, right, the wise, just as there is this joyful child, we also have a really wise adult, a wise woman or man in us. And the work is for us to contact both and have them work together. Yeah. Something else to think about. But it's there, it's in us. It's like a matter of finding a way to reconnect with it, which is what I try to do for myself and what I try to help other people with. And I think that's my cue, right? We should wrap it up.
Well, every time you come here, people won't let you go. So I wanted to give you a chance to go back to this mythical place called the West Side, which takes a long time.
That's okay, I don't mind. This is, I love to speak to this. This is such a gift to be able to share this, so I'm okay with it.
What I didn't mention is that we're also an online university, and this is one of our most popular professors, as you might guess. You're doing a Cradle and The Crown workshop for us.
Yeah.
Is it Sharon? April?
That's right, April.
Yeah, beginning of April, I think, yes.
You want to say a word about what that is?
Well, actually, I was just kind of touching on it when I was speaking to you. I help people connect to these two parts of us, of ourselves, to hold that, what I call the cradle of joy and the crown of inner authority, right? So you can come into life from that more centered and loving place. Yeah. Yes, exactly. He's such a trickster. Yes. It's a lovely way of putting it. I like it.
Also, I think we may have a few spaces left for the sound bath that starts in 30 minutes right upstairs, if you'd like to join
Oh, that sounds like a very nice way to continue this evening. Sound bath.
Raïna Manuel-Paris.
Thank you so much.